I woke up to the sound of a notification on my phone. Your account has been successfully created on Love Match. I stared at the screen with a frown on my face. What the? I've never signed up for a dating site. Maybe it's spam. But when I opened the message, it had my email address and my real name. A chill ran down my spine. Someone had created an account in my name. I clicked on the link and went to the profile. My photo, my personal information, and in the About Me section it said, I'm looking for a strong and confident man who will give me new emotions. Married, but my marriage is just a formality. My heart was pounding. Who did this? I wanted to delete the profile immediately, but it was already active. And the scariest thing, there were over 50 new chats in my inbox. Men were already writing to me. I started to shake. Is this a bad joke? Or is someone specifically trying to shame me? I took a deep breath and decided to find out the truth. I didn't know that this site would reveal my husband's worst secret. I was sitting on my bed, staring at my phone. This can't be a coincidence. Someone created this account on purpose. I opened my message list. Dozens of men had already written to me. Hi, you're so beautiful. I never thought a woman like that would be looking for an adventure. Married, you say? Well, can we fix that? Winky face. I'm exactly what you're looking for. Let's meet up. I started to shake. This is a trap. But who created it? I went into my account settings and started checking the registration IP address. Wait a second. The login was made from our home Wi-Fi. My heart skipped a beat. Someone did this to me while in the same house. It could only be my husband. I jumped out of bed. He was in the shower right now. His phone was on the nightstand. I moved closer. If he created this account, I'll find the evidence. I took his phone, quickly unlocked it. He hadn't changed the password. I opened a browser tab, and in the first few sites I visited, I saw Love Match. I was thrown into a rage. He was going to this profile. He was writing to these men on my behalf. But the main question, why? I heard the water turn off in the bathroom. There was no more time. I put the phone back and sat on the bed, trying to hide my trembling. The bathroom door opened. He came out, drying his hair with a towel. Good morning, love, he smiled as he always did. But now I knew. That smile was fake. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I forced myself to pretend that everything was fine. How was your sleep? His voice was warm, as always. I barely managed to hold back my tears. You're a liar. You're playing with me. But I knew that if I showed any suspicion, he'd start covering his tracks. So I forced myself to smile. Okay. And you? He nodded, moving closer. I barely resisted the urge to back away. If he did this to me, what else is he capable of? Did something happen? He tilted his head, peering at me. I forced myself to shrug. Just a rough morning. He kept his gaze fixed on me, as if he suspected something. I knew I couldn't say anything right now. First I have to find out the truth. The answers are hidden in his phone. When he went to the kitchen to make coffee, I quickly took his phone. I knew I had already checked the browser. But what if he was not having these conversations through the website? I opened Telegram, and there I found a chat that made me gasp. The main thing is not to write to her here. She doesn't know anything. My fingers squeezed the phone even tighter. Who was he writing this to? I opened the chat completely and saw messages that turned my world upside down. Alice! His voice sounded behind me. My heart stopped. I slowly raised my head. He was standing in the doorway, looking at me. I knew that now the game had begun. I slowly lowered his phone, trying to hide my trembling hands. He was looking straight at me. What are you doing? His voice was calm, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. He knew I had found something. Your phone rang. I forced myself to speak in an even voice. I wanted to see who it was. His eyes narrowed. What? Who was it? An unknown number. His gaze never left me. He didn't believe me, but I didn't believe him anymore either. What's wrong with you today? He finally looked away and went into the kitchen. You're kind of tense. I took a deep breath, trying to control my voice. I just didn't sleep well. Maybe you need more rest. He set a cup of coffee in front of me. His smile seemed too perfect. If I didn't know what he had done, I would believe that he really cared about me. What was he hiding? When he went to take a shower, I quickly forwarded the chat to my email. I didn't have time to read everything, but there was enough there to understand. He was planning something. I had to find out the truth before he realized that I knew everything. I opened his computer. Password. I tried our wedding date. Wrong. His birthday. Wrong. Then I entered Alice, the name of his ex-girlfriend, whom he had dated before me. Click. Access is open. My breathing stopped. I knew that I would find the truth here. I quickly opened a browser tab, and I saw another account on a dating site. But this time, it wasn't my profile. It was his, and he wrote in it that he was single. My hand shook. This wasn't just cheating. This was a game, and I had to figure out the rules of this game before it was too late. My hands trembled as I scrolled through his profile. He wasn't just active on the dating site. He lived there. Daily messages to different women. Dozens of flirty chats. And in each of them he was a different man. Somewhere he was a lonely bachelor looking for the one. Somewhere he pretended to be a successful businessman looking for fun. And in some, he used my photos and passed me off as a dissatisfied wife looking for adventure. I started to feel sick. Why? Why is he doing this? I opened one of the chats. I'm unhappy in my marriage. I don't get enough male attention. It was like I was texting another man. But I never did that. And the scariest thing was that these messages contained my personal information. Something that only my husband knew. He was writing on my behalf. My fingers clenched into fists. What was he looking for? I opened a chat with one of the men he was writing on my behalf. And I saw bank transactions. He was asking them for money. For gifts. For a trip to see each other. And some of them were actually sending him money. I could barely hold back a scream. He was using me as bait. He was posing as a disgruntled wife, luring men into a trap, and marrying them for money. I closed my eyes, trying to compose myself. This wasn't just cheating. This was a scam. And my husband wasn't who I thought he was. I quickly took screenshots and emailed them to myself. Then I turned off my laptop and went back to bed. I knew I couldn't act now. I had to play it safe. He didn't suspect anything yet. But I already knew the truth. And now the only question was, how far had he gone? I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. My husband is a con artist. He used me, my photos, my life to scam gullible men out of money. But why? Wasn't what we had enough for him? I glanced over at him quietly. He was sleeping. Calm, unconcerned. If he could sleep like this after everything he's been through. So this wasn't his first time. Deeper into his secret. I waited until morning for him to leave for work, and I opened his laptop again. This time I knew what to look for. I opened his bank statements, and I saw strange transfers. Every month, money came into his account from different people. And it wasn't just small amounts. Sometimes thousands of dollars. I opened another chat room where he wrote under a fake name. And a chill ran through me. He wasn't just extorting money. He was blackmailing people who fell in love with the fictional image of his wife. I saw the message. If you don't want your wife to find out, transfer another $5,000. I know where you live. Don't make any mistakes. My heart sank. He's a monster. He was playing with other people's lives, using me as a tool. And the more I read, the more I understood. This wasn't the first time he'd done this. He's a professional. This wasn't the first time. I opened a hidden folder on his laptop, and there were other profiles. Other women. He didn't just do this to me. He had used other women in his scams in the past. And now it was my turn. I closed my laptop, feeling myself start to shake. I couldn't stay with him any longer. But if he found out I knew, what would he do? I knew I had to be careful. And most importantly, find his biggest secret. Something that could destroy him. My hands shook as I closed the laptop. This wasn't the first time. My husband had done this to other women before. But what happened to them? Why didn't they just expose him? Or maybe they tried. My heart was pounding. If he had eliminated threats in the past, what would he do to me? Searching for answers. I pulled out my phone and started searching his social media for his ex-girlfriends. Alice was the one whose password he had used. Her profile had been inactive for several years. I opened the last post. Life is a game, and I lost. There were hundreds of comments under it. Sympathy. Questions. And then I came across the news. Alice had committed suicide 3 years ago. My throat tightened. I started digging deeper. Another woman he was seeing was Sophie. Her profile had also disappeared, but I found an article in the local newspaper. Missing. I felt a chill run down my spine. It wasn't a coincidence. All the women he had been with had either disappeared or died. I quickly set myself all the links and closed my laptop. I had to find more evidence. He knows what I'm looking for. That evening, when he came back, I pretended everything was normal. But I noticed something strange. He no longer left his phone unattended. Something had changed. He suspected I knew something. I had to act quickly, because if I found out too much, I could be his next victim. I knew he suspected something. His gaze was no longer so warm. His smile was no longer sincere. He had changed. I could feel it on an instinctive level. I had become his target, a dangerous trap. He stopped leaving his phone unattended. His laptop was always with him now. And at night, when he thought I was sleeping, I heard him calling someone. She suspects something. I held my breath. I'll figure this out. My heart stopped. I closed my eyes, pretending to be asleep, but every cell in my body screamed for danger. I knew. I don't have much time left. He wants to silence me. The next morning, he acted as if nothing had happened. He bought me coffee. How are you feeling, my love? What was he up to? I couldn't trust him anymore. Every word he said was false. Every touch he made was cold. I knew that if I didn't do anything, I would disappear, like all the other women before me. Time to act. I decided to play by his rules, pretend I didn't know anything, but at the same time find evidence that would destroy him. I had to beat him at his own game, because if I lost, I would be gone. I was no longer safe. I knew it. My husband realized that I was suspicious. He began to change his behavior, carefully covering his tracks. But the worst was yet to come. The first warning sign. That evening, I left my phone in the bedroom and went into the kitchen. When I returned, the screen was lit. I received a new message. The number was unknown. The text was short. Leave it before it's too late. My fingers clenched the phone. I looked at my husband. He was sitting on the couch, scrolling through something on his phone, as if nothing had happened. But I knew it was from him. I wrote back, "What does this mean?" The message was immediately marked as read, but there was no response. I looked up. He was looking straight at me. His lips stretched into a faint smile. And in that moment I understood. This was a warning. I had become his enemy. The next day, things got even worse. My bank cards were suddenly blocked. I received a letter in the mail. Your account is suspected of fraudulent transactions. Panic swept through me. I checked my statements and saw huge transactions that I had not made. Who did it? Him. He began to attack me. What would happen next? He was trying to stop me, to make me afraid, but I could no longer retreat. I had to act before he made his next move, and this move could be fatal. I was no longer in control of my life. He was in control. Bank accounts were frozen. Phone calls were silenced. But the worst was yet to come. A cruel trap. I received a letter from a law firm. My hands were shaking as I opened it. You are suspected of fraud. Your details were used for financial fraud on dating sites. I felt the ground give way from under my feet. This was his game. He turned everything against me, made me guilty. Now I was the one who was allegedly swindling money from men. I quickly opened my profile on a dating site. He changed the passwords. Now I was the one in the chats. I was the one who was allegedly cheating people. And most importantly, he left evidence. Correspondence, bank transfers, fake screenshots. I sat down, feeling panic grip me. No one would believe me. The police, lawyers, everyone would only see what they wanted. I was losing everything. I started getting attacked by unknown numbers. Threats, accusations. You're a fraud. How could you do this? You'll pay for this. He wanted to destroy me. And if I didn't hit back, I really would lose everything. I had to play him his way. And this time I would do it right. I became an exile in my own life. Every call, every text was a threat. We'll find you. You'll pay for everything. I deleted social media, turned off my phone, but that didn't stop them. He made me a target. My husband played the game of getting ahead of himself. He made me a traitor, a con artist, a fraud. I got a letter from the bank. Your account has been frozen due to a fraud investigation. I clench my fingers into a fist. He wants to break me, make me give myself up. But that's not going to happen. I'm not going to be a victim anymore. Counterattack. I went to see my lawyer. I need help. He looked at the documents I brought. This is serious, Alice. But do you have proof? My heart was pounding. I will find it. I knew my husband had hidden files. I knew there were more victims. And I will find them. The game is just beginning. I hacked his second laptop at night. I knew he had secret accounts, financial schemes. And I was right. Names appeared on the screen. The women he had cheated on me. His machinations, his betrayals, his forged evidence. I held his fate in my hands. Now there was only one question. How do I make him pay? I sat in the dark, staring at my laptop screen. I had a chance to destroy him. I found everything. A list of the women he had cheated on me with. His fake dating accounts. Financial transactions that proved he was the one receiving the money. The fake emails he had used to frame me. This was my trump card. And now I had to play him. His greatest fear was the truth. I knew he couldn't let me tell everything. He would do anything to keep me quiet. But now I was one step ahead. I backed up all the files and sent them to 3 different places. To my lawyer. To a journalist who was investigating the fraud. And in an anonymous cloud storage with a timer. If something happens to me, the files will be published automatically. The first trap. I created a fake account and wrote him a message. I know who you are. If you don't want this to become public, let's meet. I knew he wouldn't stand it. He always thought he was in control. And he came to the meeting. But this time I was in control. I was waiting for him in a cafe on the outskirts of a city. There was a cup of coffee on the table and a flash drive with evidence in his bag. I knew he would come. He couldn't afford to ignore the threat. And here he was, his usual confident look, the same cold smile. But now I knew who he really was. He sat down opposite me, and for the first time he didn't try to play the role of a caring husband. It's an interesting situation, isn't it? His voice was calm, but his eyes were watching me intently. I know everything. I didn't look away. He pursed his lips. You don't understand what you've gotten yourself into. I felt my heart race. No, you don't understand. I put the flash drive down on the table. Here it is. All your shenanigans. Fake accounts. Transactions. Women you've cheated on. His hand twitched, but he remained still. And what are you going to do about it? I leaned closer. If anything happens to me, it's going to be public. He froze for a second. I knew I'd hit his weak spot. His greatest fear was exposure. His reaction surprised me. And suddenly he laughed. Oh, Alice, I didn't think you were that smart. His eyes lit up with curiosity. But what if I told you you had no chance of winning? My fingers gripped the edge of the table. I'll destroy you if I have to. He leaned closer. You think I didn't see this coming? I felt a chill run down my spine. I have another trump card, and you won't like it. What is he hiding? He stood up and gave me one last look. See you later, my dear. This will be interesting. He left, leaving me with the feeling that the game was not over yet. What was he up to? And will I be able to stop him before then? I sat at the table, feeling the cold fingers of fear grip my mind. What did he mean? I thought I had all the cards. But if he was so sure, then I was missing something. I quickly left the cafe and got into my car. I had to act immediately. I had found his greatest fear. I went through all the collected materials again. Financial fraud. Fake accounts. List of victims. It was enough to ruin his life. But he was still calm. Why? I understood that there was something more. Something that could finish him off for good. And then I decided to find the person who knew him better than I did. I opened the phone and dialed the number. The rings lasted forever. And then a voice. Hello. I took a deep breath. Hi, Alice. We need to talk. It's about your history with him. Answers I didn't expect. A former victim. A woman who had been through the same thing. I met her in a small cafe outside the city. She looked wary, but her eyes spoke louder than her words. You were his target too. Her voice was shaky. I nodded, but I found evidence. I want to stop him. Alice smiled bitterly. If you've gotten this far, he's already up to something. I clenched my fingers. What exactly? She was silent for a few seconds, and then said the words that turned everything upside down. He has a backup plan. If something goes wrong, he'll frame you. A cold sweat broke out in my face. How? Alice took a deep breath. He's got all the files he can use against you. He's got fake documents, bank statements, forged correspondence. He's got everything ready to frame you if need be. I felt panic rise in my chest. Where does he keep it? She looked at me. In the safe in his office. If you find these documents first, you win. If not, she didn't finish. But I already knew the answer. I had to act quickly. I had to find the safe before he could make his final move. I flew down the road, my heart pounding in my chest. I had to get to his office first. If there was false evidence against me in the safe, that was his last trump card. I couldn't let him play it. This was the critical moment. An unexpected surprise. I parked outside his office, trying to appear calm. The security guard at the entrance had no idea that there was a war going on behind those walls. I went inside using his spare key card. Everything was quiet. I slipped into his office and quickly scanned the room. The safe. He was behind the bookcase. I crouched down, pulled out my phone, and opened a list of possible codes. His birthday? No. Our wedding date? No. I remembered what Alice had said. If you want to understand him, think like him. I punched in the numbers. 000000. Click. The safe opened. This idiot didn't even try to protect it. His biggest secret. My hands trembled as I looked through the contents of the safe. Documents proving his fraudulent schemes. Forged signatures, forged checks, financial transactions. And most importantly, false accusations against me. He really had prepared everything. But now this evidence belonged to me. I quickly took a photo of everything I found and put the documents in my bag. I was about to leave, but the door suddenly opened. He was standing in the doorway. His face was pale, but his eyes were burning with rage. What are you doing? His voice was deep and menacing. I held the bag of documents, and now everything depended on my words. I looked at him and whispered, I won. He stood in the doorway, completely blocking the exit. His eyes were blazing with rage, his fists clenched. He knew I had found his secrets. But what would he do? Let me go. Never. Put down the documents, Alice, and we'll talk like adults. His voice was even, but I could hear him seething with anger. I took a step back, closer to the table. I knew I had seconds to decide. You've lost. I said it clearly. His lips twitched. You think so? I smiled. These documents are no longer just mine. I've sent them to my lawyer, to the journalists, and to the police. If anything happens to me, it'll all come out. He froze. For the first time in all this time, I saw fear in his eyes. He didn't expect me to be so smart. You're kidding. I leaned in close to him and whispered, Check your email. He pulled out his phone abruptly, and I saw his face contort. He had received copies of the files. His own filth was now working against him. I walked past him, calmly leaving the office, feeling the cold adrenaline rush through my body. The game was over. I waited for him to try to do something. That he would pursue me, threaten me. But the next day I only received one message. You destroyed me. I smiled. Yes, I did. I sat in my apartment, staring at my laptop screen. Everything was already in motion. Journalists had received materials about his fraudulent schemes. The lawyer had handed over the documents to the police. His victims were starting to speak. I refreshed the news page. And there it was, the first article. A well-known businessman is exposed for financial fraud and cheating on women. His photo was right on the main page. I was overcome with pleasure. Now he couldn't hide. His reaction. My phone vibrated. It was his number. I pressed answer. You destroyed me, Alice. His voice was not like it always was. No cold confidence. Only panic. No, Alex, you destroyed yourself, I said calmly. I could hear him breathing heavily. You made a mistake. I can still fix it. We can make a deal. I laughed. Make a deal. Too late. I'll give you everything. Just stop it. I felt a surge of triumph welling up inside me. He was begging me. The same man who wanted to destroy me. I'm giving you what you deserve. I hung up the phone, not giving him a chance. Public condemnation. Comments under the articles exploded. I was hurt by him too. This is a great lesson for all manipulators. How could he do this for years? His acquaintances turned their backs on him. His reputation was completely ruined. And I knew, this isn't the end. The next step is to arrest him. I woke up to the sound of a new message. The news broke, the internet was on fire. His company had terminated his contract. All his accounts were frozen. His lawyer had refused to defend his case. His name was now a symbol of shame. The phone call I had been waiting for. The phone vibrated. I looked at the screen. An unknown number. I knew it was him. I answered. Alice! His voice was broken. You won. I smiled. I know. What else do you need? His voice was shaking. For the first time, I heard real fear in his tone. I want you to get what you deserve. Silence. The police will be here soon. His breathing became ragged. Alice, please. Goodbye, Alex. I hung up the phone. It was the sweetest goodbye I'd ever heard. The police are here. I turned on the news. Live. Suspect Alex Williams has been arrested in his own home. He faces years in prison. I watched him being let out in handcuffs. His confident demeanor vanished. This was a man who had lost everything. And it was because of me. I sat in front of the screen, watching him being led into a police car. His hands are handcuffed. His face is pale, filled with terror. His life is over. But I'm not done yet. His last attempt to escape. A few hours later, I received a final message. Please come. We need to talk. He was in the pretrial detention cell. He begged me to come. I decided to give him this last chance. Face to face. I entered the police station. He was sitting at a table, handcuffed. His eyes were dark, empty. You ruined everything, he whispered. I sat opposite him. You did it yourself. He clenched his fists. I can get out of here. I'll hire the best lawyers. I tilted my head, smiling faintly. Not this time. He leaned closer, anger rising in his voice. Do you hate me? I thought about it. No. You just got what you deserved. I stood up and looked at him one last time. Goodbye, Alex. Forever. His eyes filled with rage. But this time there was nothing he could do. I left the room, leaving him trapped in his own trap. I left the police station, breathing in the fresh air of freedom. Alex could no longer hurt me. His business was ruined. His reputation was destroyed. He was facing a long prison sentence. I won. But most importantly, I had my life back. A new beginning. I sold the house we lived in. I left a city full of memories. I started from scratch. With a new name. With new opportunities. Without fear. His last message. One day I received a letter in a prison envelope. From him. I didn't open it. I just held it to the candle flame and watched it burn. My past is now just ashes. The end of one story is the beginning of another. I was no longer a victim. I became a woman who had defeated a monster. And now a life awaited me where no one would control me anymore. She had won. She was free. And she would never let anyone play with her life again.